I made it through my first week of culinary school and everyone's been asking me, oh my gosh, like, can you do a bag tour? What do you wear every day? I just got a lot of comments like that on my last video, and so I thought that I would go over what my school supplies look like and yeah, just talk about what I learned this week. So first off, at orientation, they gave us our backpacks, and we don't have to use these, but it's a pretty good backpack, so I'm gonna be using it, and this is what it looks like. And I just like that it has compartments for my knife bag in the bag and for any like of my notebook, and obviously I like that it has the CIA embroidered on it. And right off the bat, I thought we should go over my knife bag because that was kind of the biggest thing that I felt I received. I've never really owned like a kitchen kit like this, so I'll just show you everything that they provided us. Basically, what's in here is every type of knife and tool that I could need in the kitchen. Okay, so starting off with all the small stuff, this is what I've got. A 9-inch plating spoon, a 9-inch perforated plating spoon, an offset spatula, a corkscrew, of course. This is an offset plating tong, so like for placing really tiny garnishes. A fishbone tweezer, a bench scraper, a plastic bowl scraper, a little peeler, and some kitchen shears. Now onto the knives. There are quite a few, but I've really only had to use like 2 so far this week, so I'm excited to use the rest. So to start off, we have a 3.5-inch paring knife, a 3-inch peeling knife. This is a 6-inch boning knife, a 9-inch bread knife, an 8-inch narrow fillet knife, a 10-inch carving knife, and my 8-inch chef's knife. And I also got tongs, a wood spatula. This is a straight fork. I got a nice whisk. It's called a piano wire wrap whisk. It has this little detail up top. I don't know if you can see. And then I got a fine zester, a fish spatula, a large plastic scraper, and lastly this tool for honing my knives. So yes, I got a ton of things, and once again, I have yet to actually bring all of these to class still. We're still in the very early stages. So far we've done stock production, like learning about stocks and broths. We've done butter clarification and some light introduction into knife cuts. So I'm excited to actually be able to use all of these eventually. But for now, I really only pack my chef's knife, my paring knife, probably gonna start bringing my spatula, but that's it. I also have my chef's jacket, which I bring, and I usually carry a good amount in there. I used to really think it was an exaggeration when people said you need to carry all this stuff in your pocket, or you know, like on your side pocket. I just never thought that was realistic, but I do find myself using all of this stuff every day. So this is my chef's jacket, and usually the things that I carry with me are, well, I still have to get a better ruler, but this is the ruler I'm rocking with right now. This is just to measure my knife cuts as we practice julienne, fine julienne, cubing, dicing, you know, like all of the random cuts. And then in my little side pocket here, I usually have to have my recipes prepared for the day. So, and she actually does surprisingly quiz you on this. So you kind of have to have your notes and your conversions ready for the amount that you're gonna make for stuff every day. So right now I have like a chicken broth from a stock recipe and vegetable beef soup recipe. And usually I do all the work at home. Like the textbooks might give you a recipe to make 1 gallon, but we in class have to make 1 quart. So you just have to divide everything by 4. And yeah, so I just do that math and I write it down, and then I write the instructions on the back. And then I usually have a printout of the week's production schedule, I guess is the best way to put it. For example, I'll just say what we did on Friday. As a class, we made chicken stock from 100 pounds of chicken bones and chicken feet, I believe. And that means we had to make 6 pounds of mirepoix and 1 large sachet, or 6 small ones. And then That's the whole class. That's all 15 of us. And then as a team, which we're mostly split into teams of 4, as a team, we had to make 2 gallons of chicken broth from stock. So I learned about the difference between stocks and broths there. And then as a pair of 2, which is 2 pairs within each team, we had to make 2 pounds of clarified butter using the simmering method and 1 quart of vegetable beef soup. And then individually, we have to set up our knife skills tray. So we started with carrots, onions, garlic, parsley, and that was it for now. But yeah, I have to carry this around every day because it keeps me on track. She won't really tell you what to do, you just have to have it ready at the certain times that it's needed. Another thing I carry is we have to print out our knife cuts sheets. And basically we're gonna get tested almost every day. And we just have to have it printed out to present to her and she'll score us. And so we get tested on things like onion julienne, onion diced, minced parsley, minced garlic. We'll do brunoise shallots eventually, we haven't done that. Bâtonnet carrots and tournade potatoes. And then finally, I always carry around a notepad because whenever we do demos, you're gonna want to write everything down that you see, and it's actually very, very, very helpful. For example, I wrote down instructions for how to do the knife cuts, like what order to do things in, and also just random little tips that she gives you. It's kind of like, she explained it as anyone can follow a recipe, hopefully, but the things that we're learning at the school, we're watching her do the demos, and it's like, it's the little tricks of, you know, it should sound like this, or it should smell like this, or I don't know, just little tricks like that, and that's usually what I write down. So very, very, very helpful. And then on the side, I always carry around a Sharpie, a pen, and my thermometer, because we pretty much always need to have those on hand. We're always labeling something or taking notes or measuring something. So that's pretty much everything I carry around every day. And then as far as my textbooks, I usually read a couple chapters of this for homework every night to prepare for the recipes for the next day. And I would say it's kind of crazy how different it is from reading a regular recipe book to this, which is, it's truly the fundamentals of cooking. It's exactly the stuff that I wanted to learn. It's the science of breaking down like the chemistry of certain foods, or the ratios, or the tasting notes. Like it really does break everything down. So, and that was only in 3 days, the stuff that I've learned. So I'm very, very excited to see what other stuff we're gonna read. So that's pretty much everything that I have as my supplies just for this first unit. And now I thought I would go over what I learned in the first 3 days. So let's see. Okay, so right off the bat, the most interesting thing that I learned was the difference between the types of bones that you get, because I've always been interested in making bone broth at home or just any sort of stocks and good soups like that. But once I learned it here, I learned the actual difference and the purpose for each different type of bone. So for example, it kind of makes sense. It's very common sense, but I didn't know that if you use the bones from veal, so younger cow, it's gonna have more cartilage because it's a younger animal and it's very youthful and still alive. It has all of its cartilage intact, so it's gonna produce a more gelatinous broth, which, you know, is preferred at times. But if you use beef bones, they're gonna have less cartilage, but they're gonna have more flavor. And now I don't know how that works. I mean, it probably just naturally develops over time, but that was just a very interesting detail to learn. So if you prefer a gelatinous broth, you'd probably want veal, but if you want something with more flavor, you would use beef. Now, another simple but interesting thing I learned was mirepoix, just learning what that was. Because this is the French style of cooking that we're learning, so there's really a lot of fancy French words for super simple things. So mirepoix is basically just chopped aromatic vegetables that add flavor to your stocks. So there's a difference between a standard mirepoix and a white mirepoix, and standard is if you're going to be making stocks with like probably beef or something, and you would use a white one for probably like fish or chicken, like the lighter kind of stocks. And I just learned, if you're ever interested in making mirepoix, the ratios are 2 parts onion, 1 part celery, and 1 part carrot. And then if you're making a white mirepoix, you would do 1 part onion, 1 part celery, 1 part parsnip, and 1 part leek. Another interesting thing I learned was some of the knife cuts and their names. You know, I've always heard julienne, but I just kind of assumed that that was like thin strips. I really didn't know what julienning was. So I learned all of the different types, and I'm gonna have to learn how to cut them, and I'm gonna have to have it memorized, how, like, the measurements of each cut. So this is what each cut looks like. Generally, this is not to scale, but I'm gonna have to memorize all of these and be able to actually execute them. So we have brunoise, small dice, medium dice, large dice, fine julienne, julienne, a bâtonnet, and paysanne. And then finally, the last interesting thing I learned was about clarifying butter. I didn't really know how easy it is, and it really makes it expensive in stores if you buy it pre-bought, but if you take the time to do it at home, it's very, very easy. Clarified butter is just when you separate the butter fat from the milk solids and the water, and so you get that clear, light colored consistency. It's ghee, basically. You've probably seen that in stores, but it can be very expensive if you buy it. But there are 2 methods to do it. You can do decanting or simmering. And decanting is kind of like a double boiler method where you're steaming the butter in a pot above the steam, and you kind of just wait for the milk solids and the water to like separate from the fat. And it's so interesting because it really is just chemistry, because you see the things separate over time. It's like it starts out as regular butter, and then you see it separate where the milk solids come up to the top, the water is at the bottom, and then right in the middle is all the butter that you want. So that's the decanting method. And with the simmering method, which is a little bit harder to execute, but it allows for less waste of the actual butter fat that you want, you actually just simmer the butter over a pot for a while until those milk solids come up to the top. There's more chance of burning it with this method, but anyway, what I learned is that by taking out those milk solids and the water, you give the butter a higher smoking point, so you can use it for more things, and it's just kind of better. Like, you wouldn't use it for everything, but it is a cool way to be able to use your butter for more things. And yeah, I would say for the first week, that's kind of the main interesting things that I've learned right now. Everything else is probably too much to explain in a video, like you really have to be there. But I'm excited to do a full week of culinary school because my first 3 days, they didn't go by without any problems, but they did go by. So I'm very excited to see what happens over the rest of this journey, and I hope you'll be back next week.